morning.
Oh,
Hi there.
Morning.
It looks like a
Good
beautiful
morning.
day in Georgia.
Yes, off Lake Chatoog. It's very, very calm. It's a little brisk, but we're going to go on a hike up at either Brasstown Bald or at the local dam where, there's a lot of biking and hiking, or where, and then we'll go on the boat for one last time before it gets put up for winter.
Well, that sounds great. Did you already go to your pumpkin patch? I think you told us about that. We're going to do that next week. We have a really great pumpkin patch too.
Usually we do the train ride, and I guess everyone's feeling nostalgic because when we called, they are booked. They are booked all through. So we're looking. There's a couple of different train rides. We just like the one in Blue Ridge because it's got such great scenery, and it's an hour-long train ride there, an hour-long back. So it's really nice. But there's plenty. We just have to find one. There's some that are scary for kids, and so we don't know what we're gonna do. We may just go to an old-fashioned pumpkin patch, and just have them, get like corn on the cob and candy apples. I know we're gonna go to the Georgia State Fair. I'm in Perry, Georgia, because my mom almost gave birth to me at the fair.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's always been a tradition. My mom's side of the family always gets us tickets to the fair for my birthday. And so the kids really love to enjoy my birthday present because now I'm older. I don't want to ride those crickety rides. They're scary. And I'm like, I don't want those carnies taking care of me. Like, no. But my kids really love it. And I like going to the craft area and the food competition areas because some of those ladies know how to really stir up a pie, and they offer their recipes and stuff like that. And then we like to look at the livestock. They've now turned it humane. So there are people that just get the milking cows and just get, the animal, not to slaughter, but to use and to take care of. And they have just so many different things for the kids. And so we really enjoy going.
Yeah, we have one that we love to go to too that has cows, and it's fun to see the kids doing the competitions with the animals and all the crazy looking chickens and the baby cows that suck on your fingers.
Yes, those are my favorite. It's so cute. They're so cute. And we don't eat pork, and so our kids have an affinity for pigs, especially after reading Charlotte's Web and all of that. So they're very much so. Let's go see the pigs. And it doesn't smell so good, but they are so smart because the people who have them will show us like how they understand just cues and human behavior. I think it's wholesome in a way where kids aren't just waiting till Halloween to dress scary and go out. You're actually enjoying what all is offered in the fall season. You get to see the leaves. You get to go to farming areas. You get to appreciate farmers and those who take care of our food supply. And they come in all shapes and sizes. And, it's an education because we use every moment as a teaching moment. Every single question, one of us is like talking about, what it would be like if we were physically doing it, to kind of give them a visual. Then they're standing there as a tactile where they can touch the animal. And then we ask the farmer pertinent questions so that they have a deeper understanding. But, they have tractors there, and the kids like to, look at, those are so cool. And it just brings you back to the way it used to be before people started splitting up into tribes in a way where they make fun of farmers, or where there's city people versus country people. I know there's the city mouse versus the country mouse and all that jazz. But, I really think that there was a time when it was cool to go to the fair. It was cool to appreciate your farmers. And it was cool to go into the city and appreciate your really good cooks and your really good boutiques and just really have an affinity for, going to both areas and enjoying just humans and socialization and really getting to know people who make jewelry, custom and leather bags, just or faux leather bags, just whatever your thing is. You get to see so much talent out there. And
it's coming back, Amber. It's coming back because
hopefully
a lot of people I know are doing the same thing. They're re-experiencing they're taking their kids out to the country too, because they themselves want to get back and see what they grew up with. And remember that for thousands of years, the harvest was a big deal. And we didn't have much store-bought food. Stores are only relatively 60, 70 years old. So the harvest was the time for getting your food together for the winter.
And getting together and celebrating and stuff too. I love apple season. I'm a big fan of apples, and we have such variety of apples. And at the farmers markets in the city, there's lots of city farmers. Some are specialize in greens or mushrooms, or apples that are really unique varieties that grow in their backyard. Maybe they have a big backyard with a few fruit trees, and they come and sell it at the farmers market. And there's Asians with all the beautiful bok choy, and just there's a big range of immigrants that have different farming traditions.
We went apple farming about a month. We went apple picking about a month ago at Hillcrest.
You're
Farms,
ahead of us.
and yes, by about 4.5, 5 weeks, I think. When our first apple picking. So we go when the Honeycrisp apples are ready. Those are one of my favorites. Right now you got the Arkansas Black, you've got Pink Lady, you got all these other ones that are now popping up that at the very beginning, if you go, you'll get some really good, like Honeycrisp, Sugar Crisp, the Rome Beauty. Like those are really popping at that time if you go at the very beginning. But if you go towards the middle where there's more variety, you miss out on the Honeycrisp. And that's my favorite because you can bake with it. It's great to crunch. I mean, you can make applesauce out of it. It's one of the most diverse apples. And I'm not a big tart apple person because... I am. My husband loves Granny Smith, and he also loves to put salt on it. And so that's the only way I can eat a Granny Smith, because I pucker the whole time and I can't get it down. But I can eat lemons, which is really weird that I can't eat Granny Smith without a little sauce on it. But it's a Southern thing, I guess. But I'm glad you guys are enjoying the apple season now, because it's one of my favorites
right now. Yeah, they're extra crunchy compared to all the rest of the year, I think. So it's just so much fun to try the different varieties and all the sampling. Oh, look, here's a Michigan urban farming initiative. Yeah, there's backyard farms and collective farms in old reclaimed land that was going to be a freeway and then wasn't going to be a freeway. So there's you can get a plot or just grow in your backyard. There's a lot you can do in the city that's farming. There's lots of trees. We go around our block. There's an apple tree, and the little 2-year-old dude I take for walks a lot. He loves the apple tree. Apple, and I pick him these little teeny apples, and he's so thrilled. It's really fun.
The Hillcrest Farm apple, but we're gonna start going to Mercier Farm. But while the kids were small, we go to Hillcrest because they have pigs racing, they have goat petting, they have these weird tubes that they've made slides out of. They have this huge pillow that's blown up and kids jump on it, so it's like a small trampoline on the ground. So it's really hard to get hurt, thank goodness. It's not like the one my kid just broke his arm on. But like they have where you listen to bands, and it's the bluegrass music, not today's traditional country, which I don't really like so much, but the old-fashioned bluegrass, where it's just they're talking about harvest, they're talking about the farm and getting up early, and the songs are really nice, very family oriented. But then you walk through just groves and groves, and then they also have like a hay ride, and then they have a tractor ride. So the kids are always hyped. But this year when we went, I could tell that they were just like, okay, are we going to pick the apples? And then they wanted to get the local honey, and so they like the Tupelo and Wildflower. I like to try some of the sour wood and some of these other honeys, but we all pick out our favorite type of honey. And then I get the pickled okra because it's delicious. And then everyone picks out and we like the hot jams, or the mild pepper jams, because if you've ever had it and put it on a thing of goat cheese, and you just lay out the goat cheese and then you top it with the the pepper jam and put a cracker in it. It is so delicious. I can't stop eating it. So we only do it once a year. But yeah.
Well, sometimes honey is a really good way if you get real specific varieties. It's a good way to treat allergies with aversion therapy.
That's
So
what
that's
we
a
do.
cool thing to remember. Honey is a very healing substance. So there's
We don't want to
a
give
lot
the
of
kids Allegra or any of these things unless they really can't breathe, because we all have fall allergies, and two of us have. My husband and my youngest have spring and fall. Me and my oldest have fall allergies, and that's why we re-up on these local honeys, because they're like magic. They literally, you feel the drainage, your sinuses hurt. You take the honey, and now you can go back outside, and your body seems to just adjust. And then over a couple of days, even though the pollen count is high, you're not having the same symptoms.
Well, I think one of the things we're seeing with the vaccine and the virus or whatever's going on is a lot of accelerated allergies, and we had to deal with that in our family this week, actually, where there was a bad skin reaction, and the antibiotics made it way worse. So I had to use the stuff that I learned when I was having those runaway infection things where everything was allergic. Anytime I tried to treat it with a medicine or go to any doctor or emergency room, it would become another allergy. So that's what they call ADE, autoimmune enhanced disease, and it's something that the Salk Institute wrote a whole paper on in regard to the spike protein, that is one of the dangers of the spike protein. So you see all the inflammation. And anyway, so I used what I learned in my allergies. I gave him oregano oil and coconut oil, olive oil on it. And those are all antibacterial, they're antifungal, they're antiparasitic, and antiviral are all in those oils. So that's something you can either eat them or put it on your skin. And clay brings the blood and lymph to the surface as it dries. So we tried those two things, and it was amazing how quick it started to reverse a really bad skin reaction. So if allergic, a compound allergy type thing that was starting to take off in a scary way, and it just turned it around. So
Carol,
it's a good thing to remember.
Yeah. Hello, Tara.
So I have a big question. I've heard, and I don't know if it was you that said it, that clay, if you think you have like a spot that has to do with sun damage, and you think it could turn into skin cancer if you just put clay on it, often that it pulls that root, that
I use it all the
cancer,
time,
and then spot disappears. Is that true?
Well, I've used it many, many times. If I get a little rough spot, starting to move in that direction, and it takes it back to skin. And I even had one right here that got really bad, and it was, everybody I saw said, you better go to the skin doctor. But I kept up with the clay, and it took a really long time, but it went all the way back to skin.
What did you do? Did you do the powder, turn it into paste, and just set it on there?
Yeah, and let it dry.
Yeah, okay.
You can let it, it takes about an hour to dry if it's not too thick. And you can feel it. It gets hot, and you can feel the circulation come to the surface.
Okay.
So it draws stuff out of the skin, just like you can get patches to put chemicals into your skin, but you can use a clay to draw heavy metals and stuff out, I think, or I don't know exactly what it'll take out. It depends what's the problem. But a lot of times I think when you get these things in your skin, it's that there's some clogging going on in the maybe in your energy body or in physically in the circulation of the lymph or the blood. So when the clay happens and it brings it all there, it starts working from underneath to pull it out from underneath, because you're getting better circulation all of a sudden. So
Yeah.
just a few
Is it
days of that treatment, but you don't want to do it every day. You need some time to not do it.
so?
Let
Is
it.
it bentonite clay? Is that one of
Yeah.
them? Okay.
And I just mix it up with water. One teeny little thing can last for months and months. It doesn't take very
I
much.
have clay, but I also have friends that and family that they'll get a spot and then they'll be like, I got to go get this cut out. And I'm wondering, I was like, well, I heard something about clay. Let me ask Carol the next time I'm on.
Yeah, because all
So yeah.
my friends and relatives, I mean, I'm of Scottish descent, so people have a lot of skin cancer. They've all had they cut it off and it grows back. You got to get it cut again. So I thought, okay, I know I have this. I'm going to do this other thing and see what happens. And I haven't had to have anything cut or anything get worse. So I would say, yes, use it. It's one of those, it doesn't cost much. It doesn't taste bad. It doesn't have bad side effects.
And it's natural.
Yeah, it just brings your own circulation up to that area. It says, pay attention, body, pay attention to this right now. And
Yeah.
that's,
I actually mix it with apple cider vinegar.
oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah.
How much? Like what part to what part? And what
Just
what is
just
what does
enough
it
to
do?
make it like like
Consistency.
moist enough to spread. You know what I mean? You don't want it too liquidy. You kind of
Mhm.
want it thick enough so that it can make a nice like paste, So usually the powder goes really far, but also I want to highlight what you guys were saying about the oregano. The oregano
Mhm.
is one of the number one things to have in your medicine cabinet. Like Carol was saying, it's if you need an antibiotic, it works like that. Antifungal, antibacterial. It's all around.
Antiparasitic. All of those oils are
Yeah.
antiparasitic. So if you're
We do
worried
the
about those,
tincture. So we do the tincture of oil of oregano.
mhm.
Because it goes fast and I feel like I know it's getting in there. And I usually do it before we have an Italian meal. So if I'm gonna have like spaghetti, and my grandmother makes it a really cool way without meat. So it's um diced tomatoes and onions, but she cooks the onions till they're translucent in olive oil, salt, and pepper. She did, and then she would add in the tomatoes that were diced, lots of them, and mix them together. And then she would just mix them with the noodles, and it was very natural, very, al dente. But she would add lots of garlic and Italian seasoning. And I find that after I take a tincture of olive oregano, if I finish it off with like spaghetti, I don't get that
Yeah.
like that oily taste for a long time.
Well, so many cuisines that developed over a long time incorporate, natural healing things. Like look at Indian food, like turmeric. Just it's another one of those amazing substances that does your body so much good on so many levels. One of the highest of all the amazing
I've wondered
healing
about
things.
saffron. Is there any benefit to saffron? Because it's beautiful and it tastes good. So, but I don't know
so
if it's
expensive.
beneficial.
It
I love
probably
it
is.
though.
I don't know. I know that's definitely Persian. They use a ton of it in everything, in rice all the time. So I, I, I would guess, yes, there is some benefit to it. It's a precious substance, so it's a teeny little thing, costs so much.
Yeah, it's expensive, but
Hmm.
I think that's why I like it because it feels like a delicacy. It tastes really good. And
Hmm.
yeah, and it's really good in rice. I really like it in rice. And then with a little rosemary. Um, and like I don't know if so one of my favorite like go-tos in the winter is you take a French bread and you split it and you kind of keep it a little toasty with olive oil, salt, and pepper. Then you take button mushrooms, like 3 or 4 different types of mushrooms. You saute them and like a teriyaki or just a little smidge of a like a brown sauce of your choosing, and then you top it on that French bread, and then you add really cold tomatoes that have been diced and tossed in olive oil, salt, and pepper, and rosemary, and then you put it on top of that, and you toast it just for like a couple seconds more, and then you have that saffron with rice. It's a lot of carbs, but it's very hearty, and you sit in front of a fire or you're sitting around camping. It is really amazing. And then you are ready to go to sleep. You're full, and it It's got the mushrooms, and we just pile it on top and then just crunch away.
You guys, the one with the pasta and the sometimes meat tomato sauce, do your families call that any nickname?
They make fun of me because when I was a baby, I called it Sketties.
Yeah.
And I used to throw a fit because spaghetti was my favorite food, and I would really throw a temper tantrum. My grandparents would spoil me about it. My parents would, there was consequences. But if we went somewhere, I would demand sketty, and then so they'd get it, and then I'd demand more. And we used to go to Shoney's Big Boy. I don't know if there was anything like that in the up north, but when we would go, I would say sketty. They'd get me sketty, and it was an adult size. And I was maybe 2 or 3, and then I would demand more. And my grandparents, oh yeah, and my dad would say, no, she doesn't need any more. But I loved spaghetti, and I'd get it all over me, and it was just, it's always been like a staple. We love it, but sometimes we do meat, but it not all the time, because my grandmother has an amazing recipe that just includes tomatoes and onions, and
Well,
you'd be surprised how delicious just basic tomatoes and onions with spaghetti
yeah,
is.
you can make it with some good Parmigiano. Well, Amber, it's funny that your name for it was Sketty, because my little brother used to call it Busketty, and so all of us 4 kids have always called it Busketty ever since.
It used to. They said that at first I said Pusketty, but that soon after, because they would say spaghetti, spaghetti, and I'd say Pusketty, Pusketty, and then I went to Sketty because I got frustrated
Yeah,
because they kept correcting me, and so I put the P off of it, where I wasn't saying Pusketty, and I started saying Sketty, because then they chilled out a little bit more.
Well, ours starts with a B, Busketty.
I love Busketty. It's so funny. Well, it's strangely enough, when you make it with when my nana made it with the little elbow noodles, I'm not sure where she got it, but we called it American chop suey. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of American chop suey.
That's
yeah,
so cute. I love it.
But Dave, he's from the Midwest, and they called the same thing slum gum.
That's hilarious.
Well, it's long been said, I mean, for thousands of years, that food is your medicine and medicine is your food. So I think, there's just
we stand by that 100%.
Yeah. And I was really reminded of that, spending a bunch of hours in the ER last night with a family member. And we were sitting right next to this incredibly deformed obesity that I'd never even witnessed that, just huge amounts of adipose tissue just everywhere on this poor woman. That was just, it was amazing. But her and her husband were eating bags of Halloween candy. And it was just like a shocking, horrific thing to witness them doing that, to themselves. Or, he wasn't as bad, but it was just something I'd never seen.
I think a lot of it's trauma based.
Probably.
And it usually so I fluctuate in my weight, and I know exactly the cause. It was because whenever there was a reward system in my family, it wasn't a thing, it was food. So if I had a really good grade, it was, do you want brownies? If I had anything that was rewarded, it was rewarded with food. That was number 1. And then number 2, it was a way where that comfort, whenever you felt down, that thing that you went towards reminded you of a person that made you feel good, or vice versa. Like if you're depressed, it kind of reinforced, if you ate something that, someone who was not being nice, it kind of reinforced, why you were sad. So it's a feeling thing for some people. And I've, beat it a lot of times, but essentially when I get stressed out, that it's not alcohol, it's not drugs, it's not, gossip or causing drama or going out and trying to stir up people and emotions. It's literally food. It's my healing, it's my comfort, it's everything. And I think when I see people like that, I always wonder, was there a triggering effect? And then there was a couple of years when my dad was a trucker, and he lost his job and he tried to sell Amway. And that you made a reference about it the other day, and it cracked me up, Carol. And there was a struggle moment, and when that happened, we were like beans and rice. And I remember that scarcity that we were
Mhm.
experiencing. That whenever I hear there might be a food shortage or crisis, that instinct kicks in. I'm like, okay, we got to get non-perishables. We got to do this, because I remember seeing the stress on my parents' face and me not understanding, and I don't want my kids to go through that. So if it was just me and my husband, I'd be like, oh yeah, we got a little bit of food. Yeah, fine. But because there's kids involved, I get like, oh, we got to make sure I have enough beans, rice, band-aids. I got to make sure I have all that stuff.
Toilet paper.
Yeah, because I
It's
can't
funny
watch
about
them
that
stress.
scarcity, because I noticed that the toilet paper in our grocery store was extra full and on sale, and there was just, they were the people didn't freak out like they did earlier when they said no toilet paper, so it just built up this huge stock.
We're beefing up our trade route.
Yeah, right. That's what we need to do.
My grandpa and his siblings, they lived up in New Hampshire in the country, and they were hit hard during the Depression. And my Auntie Bet, was the sweetest thing, the most caringest thing, but she like could not throw away food. You know what I mean? She would keep like moldy food. She would just like, she was the oldest, and they went to sleep hungry like almost every night, and which is just so, like, we talk about the long-term manipulations of people coming in, and it's just like that, slowly getting rid of their land, their business, their ability to be sovereign, and even though they were country people and that was a hard time, on the flip side, the same siblings of the same family, I feel like, because they did eventually move to the city, I feel like the people that stayed in the city actually had it the hardest. Like it's like, you think that everything's there for you in the city, and in a way it is. That's like what they are, but at the same time, you have less and less control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I find the countryside to be more sustaining. Obviously living near the ocean is more food security, things like that. But yeah, it's literally in our DNA. Part of the epigenetics is not only just our relationship with food, but also our ancestors. And Amber, I think that you have a great relationship with food. You're so creative, and it's such a healthy thing to have as your highlight, that you need. Everyone balances things that they that they love and they need to keep in balance, and I think food is one of those things that, as humans, we should never be straying that far away from. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's heartbreaking to see someone like, yeah, on the obese side too. But also like ultra skinny too is like
Yeah.
scary and unhealthy,
Yeah.
Yeah,
We,
both
Well, you
extremes.
think they might have cancer or some horrible wasting disease, but it is scary. It's terrifying to witness that, whether it's self-inflicted or not.
It is. And I
Well,
remember being young. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
well, I just wanted to bring up the fact that that we don't know exactly what's going into a lot of the manufactured foods. There was a TV commercial years ago. I think it was 1976. Lay's potato chips. I'll bet you can't eat just one. Carol, do you remember that?
I remember
There,
that.
there,
Yeah, and it's hydrogenated oil that was in those, and that's not a
Well, there
good
might
thing.
also be something else because
Mhm.
one doctor in my hometown of Cleveland suspected that they were putting something in the potato chips that was not on the label, and that was causing people to really crave the potato chip. And the more you eat, the more salt, and the more salt you get, the more Coca-Cola. And so he just told my mother, do not let your kids eat these potato chips. Now, obviously, she had to, once in a while, she had to let us have some. But I think that the reason that me and my siblings, had a respectable weight our whole lives was because my mother insisted on very few potato chips.
Well, did any of you see that movie called Super Size Me? It was
Yes.
documentary about McDonald's, eating
Yes.
McDonald's. It was a young, healthy guy whose girlfriend was a nutritionist, actually, and he performed an experiment of eating McDonald's 3 times a day and for 1
For a
month.
year. For a year.
No, it was 1 month. It was
Oh.
only 1 month. And he did it where if they ever asked him to, would you like that supersized, which was part of their commercials at the time, he had to say yes and eat it. And he took a whole physical with a doctor at the beginning. And he was totally in good shape. He was like in his 30s or maybe early 40s or something. He was, at the peak. He was very fit, and in a short period of time, in a few weeks, he was getting tested by the doctor every week, and he was traveling all over the country, so he was getting a sampling of all the different McDonald's everywhere. And his tests just started getting worse and worse. His blood pressure, his liver tests, all the tests got worse and worse. And before the end of 1 month, the doctor said, you have to stop this or you're going to die of cirrhosis of the liver. And he said, nope, I'm going to complete the thing. And he did. He completed the whole thing. He didn't die, but he was in horrible physical condition after 1 month. And then they talked about how he craved it. It was addictive. That diet was, he would wake up and want it, and he'd want to eat all that food. And he gained a ton of weight. And then after he finished his month, his girlfriend took over and gave him a cleanse and gave him a good diet. And, he completely restored himself. So it's a great movie.
So what is really difficult as parents, and what I've noticed is people say all the time you had to use child psychology on your child to get them to do A, B, C, or D. And traditionally, I'm one of those that I would want to cut everything out and then have them on a strict thing. But then when they go to school, they're around their friends and everywhere else, and their friends are having it or tasting it, and then I'm not allowing it. Then when they get out on their own, they may become addicted to it because they were never allowed to have it. Exactly. So what we try to do is we'll have like family dance night. If we're going to be active, if we're going to be running around or walking a lot or doing a lot, okay, we can have French fries. If we're at, somewhere like Six Flags or Stone Mountain Park or something like that, yeah, sure, we can get their fudge, and then we can get their French fries or their chicken fingers or whatever it is. But we're going to be playing mini golf. We're going to be going on a hike. We're going to be walking like 3 or 4 miles that day. But then my kids aren't upset whenever their friends are having all these things where they sneak it and then they crave it. And then when they're not around us, that's all they get, where they feel left out. And, there's things like in holidays that we talk back and forth about whether it's part of, our religion or it's okay to do or whatever. And I look at it like, if you tell your child no, they like, if you say, well, I don't want to bring in a Christmas tree because it's not really this, or I don't want to, have a Christmas tree because I don't celebrate Christmas in that way, whatever it is, if all their friends are doing it, they will grow up and do it 50 times worse. The parents are like, I'm not going to let my kid go Halloween trick-or-treating. Some of my friends that were never allowed are the ones that have all the little blow-ups in their front yard. They feed the whole neighborhood. Everything is Halloween. They have every decoration under the sun, and it becomes like their thing, even though they were raised not to do it. So we try to do a balanced approach where we show our kids all of the things. We talk to them about it. We tell them why people shouldn't do this as a diet all the time, when it can be appropriate, but what it actually does to your body. And then we have them point out, like, hey, you just had M&Ms. The food coloring, look at how you're acting. You're not listening. You're running around. You're arguing with one another. You just crashed. Do you see what it does to your body? And then, having something natural like apples with honey on it, or a fruit salad, or like fruit with a little whipped cream on it, they don't act like that afterwards. And we point those things out so they know, yeah, I like this. Yeah, my friends have this, but I definitely have zero self-control. when I have it. And I don't know why my body is doing this. And so I think that will make them grow up and be aware of what it does to their body, aware, and they don't feel like they missed out, but they also are craving those healthy things, because I'm always afraid of the rebellion. If I'm way strict in one area, you can't listen to this music. They're going to not only listen to that music when they get out of my house, but they're going to produce that very music because I said no. So I always have to like think before I say no. I have to think, oh gosh, you're going to make it worse, Amber. Let's do it a measured way where they feel like they have autonomy, but they're also learning why we don't prefer it that way. It's difficult at this age with kids in this kind of world where everything that tastes good, like, and is right there, could kill you.
And is addictive.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100% because, you know, not necessarily about food, but like I was that kid that if you said, oh no, don't do this, and didn't give a good reason, then I'm going to find out for myself what's going on with it, you know? So, and when it comes to food, I think that that's a really good way to go too, because it's like when you're making the choices, just like anything in life, when you're making the choices, make good choices, make the best choices. But it's not going to be psychologically healthy if you obsess about, you know, what other people are making choices, like how they made a food or something. Unless you have an allergy or something very strict, then usually the person made it with love. Just accept the food, eat it, and enjoy it because you didn't choose at that time, and that's okay. You know, when you choose, you're going to choose the best. You're going to choose organic. You're going to guide the kids in the right way. You're going to compare, like, hey, this gummy bear vitamin is what you're used to. So if you eat a real gross gummy bear that just is junk, you're just like, don't even really like it as much. You know, your taste buds are trained for those kind of perceptions of natural sugars, balance of salt, fats, all that.
Well, what we my kids love the Fanta orange with like vanilla ice cream in it because it's like creamsicle. But we bought that Soda Stream, and we can do our own carbonated water and then add orange juice, or add, you know, what's healthier, like a frozen yogurt that is like an orange sherbet to that Soda Stream, and it has that same flavor. Where if they're craving it, it's usually the carbonation that people crave, is really why they want the beverage, because iced tea can be too sugary and not good for you as well. But you know, we found that using it and making our own soda by using natural juices is a way where they feel like they're getting that, you know, that thing, but it's made at home, where we use our own way of carbonating it with the little machine and then adding a juice. And so, you know, they can have like an orange, raspberry juice, and they just like the burn. It's literally the bubbly stuff that reminds them of Fanta, or reminds them of like the soda that if they go visit their grandparent, they're going to have. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's a workaround, and then we don't have to hear all the time, we never get this, and rah, rah, rah. You know, we do that same thing with Halloween candy, or the candy, instead of buying the whole bar, it's the little one. So if they want, you know, here's a Snicker, that's great. And then we make sure if they're going to have that, they have to have a healthy meal. Like there's always got to be a salad. There's always got to be vegetables. And it's just a way to, you know, always have something there that is good for them, and then allow them to express their favorites or whatever and find workarounds. Because, man, the temptations and what those kids are like seeing at school, and my friend gets this, and so I get super excited if they say my friends are all having yogurt. I'm like, okay, let's go do this. You know, there's the vegan yogurt, there's almond yogurt, like the almond coconut, and then there's regular whole milk yogurt. And you know, they go and they try it all, and I get excited when the kids' fad is something that's actually healthy.
Well, maybe you can try making something that I've been trying, not because of loving soda, but because of trying to incorporate sometimes tonic water with the big Q, quinine.
Oh,
So I've
yeah.
been,
That's
yeah,
good.
so I've been trying to attempt to mix quinine into drinks for the goal of making it taste like a Shirley Temple. So maybe with your new thing, you can try some different cherries and some quinine and try to get that
And
right, because the
grenadine would
grenadine,
be good.
yeah,
Yeah, with the actual maraschino cherries, they would love that.
yep.
And I
And then
wonder if
it's
there's
got
like a
that.
vanilla that could be added to it, or just like a scoop of vanilla frozen yogurt, and then they feel
You'll
like they're
probably
having a
come up with
float.
the perfect recipe.
Well, they'll be excited because anything that makes them feel like it's a treat, but I can sleep well knowing they're not full of chemicals. It's hard to balance. I mean, I'm telling you, with the time that you have and grabbing stuff, and they're growing bodies, and they're always
Mhm.
hungry, and they always want something. Like, you don't want to have to go to the store every 5 minutes because they ate all the things that were healthy. And that's one thing we have to really realize. All the healthy organic stuff is so expensive compared to like a box
Mhm.
of junk, and it's so sad that, we get lectured about our health, and, well, doctors are dealing with this, and, there's too many people doing this, but they're not getting onto the companies that fill us full of these chemicals. And that's why I use the term eugenist, because in your heart, if you're a doctor and you see people struggling with weight, with blood pressure, with all these things, and your first thing is that person has an issue or they don't have control, but you don't look at their monetary amount that they make, their socioeconomic class, and you don't understand the food that they have to purchase in order to feed everybody in the house, and you're just nagging at them, but you're not asking questions of the GMO companies and what they're putting in our food. To me, you're just a natural eugenist. Your thing is to actually blame the people that you want to get rid of, rather than the companies that are helping you
Mhm.
expediently get rid of those that you don't like. And I think that that's where my frustration and my impatience comes out. Is, if you're a healer, you should be wondering what's causing people to get sick. Not only tell them not to eat it, but actually put all your lobbying effort and your criticism towards those companies to bring attention as a doctor to those companies that are destroying human bodies. And yet they don't. They think of just ways to cut down the actual person,
Yeah,
and,
and
and to be annoyed by them.
the legal system really reinforces that, because there are people that have sued these companies for, why they have cancer. Like Monsanto got a giant suit and they lost it, but then they just pay off the poor person or his family and make a settlement, and that way they can still sell it.
That's what they'd rather do. They would
Yeah.
rather pay to
Hmm.
poison. It's pay to poison.
Yeah.
That's a eugenist at heart to me. You can never
Hmm.
convince me that somebody whose first thing is to blame the individuals after those are the options that those individuals are given. And then you don't blame the companies that actually put those things into it that cause that individual to be addicted, to have those health issues. That individual does not have the power that those companies and those doctors do in order to exact change. And yet they first point to the individual. Like,
But
every
that's
poor
the
person
problem
should
with
be
the legal
superhuman.
system. The legal system allows people to win a civil suit, whereas a class action suit against the whole company is, certain kinds of suits are way harder, and that would be a sanction against that company. So they allow the civil suits to go through and for people to win and to think, oh boy, finally, we showed them, but then nothing changes. So,
Well,
yeah.
I have found in my studies that when you follow these trails, it all goes back, like we talk about, to the same Gordian knot.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so originally, like, I started off this journey as an environmentalist, one of my aspects. And when you realize that they pay to poison, that they really, it's all just this, like, corporate dominance, and they really do not care about human lives, and again, we talk about it. We're not talking about capitalism and free market. We're talking about people that purposely put poisons into the environment through their products, and they, for many generations, have taken these products. The method: oh, go to the family pizza spot or whatever. Oh, can we buy you out or force you out? We're going to become the new Dominoes, and we're going to pretend, oh, since 1917, we've been a family oriented. And it's like, no, you came in, you changed the ingredients, you kept the name, and it's all a big trick. And so I
Yeah.
think just even the very act of reading ingredients in front of the kids, and just like, or anybody who doesn't do that, to realize
Yeah.
you got to see what you got to look.
Well, the whole Green New Deal is such a trick too, because they're saying that carbon is bad, even though the entire biosphere is built on carbon, and carbon dioxide is bad, even though plants are what breathe it. And every time, and then showing the Al Gore picture of it going up, 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 but that's a small slice of the whole big picture of carbon dioxide and oxygen. In the long term, when carbon dioxide goes up, more plants grow. And, we evolve and we adapt if it's slow. So it's the whole biosphere is growing, and it's always going to be making either more carbon or more carbon dioxide, or less as we go on. That's not really explaining all the pollutants, all the heavy metals that aren't meant to be there. It doesn't talk about it. And then the solution is that you pay the worst pollutants, they can buy credits. So it's a betting scheme. It's a derivatives scheme that is, not, it's allowing the bad guys to be worse.
I'm
Yeah.
hearing a lot about, there's some people that want to do carbon capture. So instead of worrying about carbon in the way that they are, which puts a lot of rules and
Mhm.
really just funnels people into smart cities and makes us less in touch with nature, and then they have control over the soil, the things that we should know, the additives and stuff going into it, getting us more disconnected, where we could have more synthetic foods and stuff that's really our body is not made for. That there are some people that are looking at carbon capture and
Mhm.
recycling it and using it and directionalizing it towards plants and towards things, instead of locking down human beings.
Yeah,
And
that's what I
so
was talking about last week with the biochar. That's exactly what it does. It can put it back into the soil as a real positive ingredient for growing really good things. So yes,
Dave was so excited when I told him what you were telling us about the biochar. He was psyched. He's like, that's what I've been missing.
Yep, I found some.
yeah, the carbon capture is a whole like community out there, and they're trying all these different ways. I think that is a really great way to really try to figure out what to do without making life so difficult on people,
Hmm.
and funneling them and changing their whole existence, and then putting it towards actually solving the issue, and then allowing people to farm and to do what it is that helps them take care of their community. Because we should face it, if there was ever a huge issue, and then the corporations broke down and these smart cities broke down, people are going to wish that they had their own garden. They're going to wish that they were able to be
Hmm.
self-sustaining. And if you're a leader and you are making yourself vulnerable to the point where your whole existence and all of your tax base is vulnerable, that if a couple people fail or a couple of entities fail, or something drastic happens because they don't use the soil correctly and they put everyone in harm, like how much have you debilitated your civilian population, your citizenry, by keeping them from being self-sustaining in a crisis or an emergency where you're vulnerable as a country? So it's just irresponsible. It's the same thing of letting these hospitals close down, that
Hmm.
the federal government didn't give the amount of Medicaid or Medicare to the hospital. So the hospital, and the price gouging, like everything, just hospitals are going bankrupt. And when you have that happening, and then if there's a traumatic situation or, an environmental, emergency, anything that puts a lot of people needing to go to the hospital and you only have one trauma center, that's ridiculous. So it behooves every city to make sure each zone or district has a 24-hour like emergency uh area, right? So you can go into District 9 and there's two 24-hour clinics that can handle at least, stabbings, shootings, or your emergencies. But like burn units, okay, I can see them being flight lifted. And your biggest traumatic things, then that's where you move and maneuver those people to that hospital. But there's not enough room for all the accidents, car accidents, all the things that happen out there with one hospital. And then some cities are coming down to one hospital, and we're going to be in a very sad state. So something's wrong when the people who run your cities and your states are not thinking about putting 24-hour trauma buildings and centers in each district, knowing that they've got a crisis in major hospitals. That is what's driving me nuts, is because what in the world are they thinking? What in the world is going on?
Well, sadly, I think we've kind of, we understand on one level that what they're thinking is it's time to break everything down. So everybody really wants this one world solution, which they don't. People
Well,
don't.
I'll just say this. I wish I had for you guys right now. But I don't know did you guys hear that Hippocratic oath a new fangled Hippocratic oath that the students of I think of the University of Minnesota, what they had to recite? Did you guys hear that?
No, I haven't. What is that?
Okay, so
It's ridiculous.
It's so weird. So I just want to say that one of the things that we know is going on, they always put these ribbons and bows and fancy language on everything, and things that we care about, like our native people, our native culture, stuff like that. So they'll be like, put all these fancy like names on it, like, oh, we're doing this because we respect Dakota land and we're always going to consider indigenous medicines and da da da. It's like, oh yeah, really? Tell that to the pharmaceutical companies that you're basically working for. And it had creepy things like we go against white supremacy and binary gender and stuff. And you're like, and going into a biological field, how can you say non-binary? It makes no sense. And it's like literally, like you're saying, the breaking down of like structures that are, like you're saying, Amber, that are supposed to be like that we set up in a way that is like, okay, neighborhood warrior style, we know what we're doing, community. But it's like, no, everyone wants to insert stupid everywhere. And then the poor people that are taking this oath and they're literally reciting it, and so they put all the good stuff in it that makes it sound good, but if you have the stink eye, you're just like, wait, what? Like it's odd.
Well, what I noticed in that thing that they have them say, which is insane, is that they respect the Native American. They respect their healing and their use of naturopath. They're full of it. Like they wouldn't even allow any of the things that
That's what I said.
actually people were trying to use when they went to get vitamins and nutrients and supplements. Fauci was coming out saying no, like that's dangerous. He wouldn't even say yes to vitamin C for the longest time, and it's so ridiculous that they're chanting that they're going to go back or they're going to respect these medicines. What? But they're not going to respect everybody's naturopath medicines. They're just going to respect this tribe of Native American. Like it's such a way to confuse and to capture areas that then are told it's for you, and then later generations they forget who they are and they forget what they once knew, and it's such trickery that's disguised as like love and caring that I wonder why people can't see that when you say you're going to be a best friend to everyone, that's actually impossible in a field where you're supposed to heal people and you're supposed to be thinking about not only their traditions, but what they request and not putting big pharma first. And it's just very sad that they're using these token sayings in order to capture people, to convince them, don't think for yourself.
Well,
This is very sad.
yeah, after World War II, that's when they started working on this, the Hippocratic Oath. I mean, I think there had been one for a long, long time, but after the Nazi stuff in the Holocaust, they added some words that were only there for 1 year, and then it was taken out. And it said that no doctor could have a conflict of interest with by earning money from what they were selling in terms of owning it, the um, I can't remember the exact words, but it was in there. You can't get money from your cure that you well, anyway, they took that out
Like they
after
can't
one.
manufacture their own products. Is that what it
I
came on?
think the Sacklers helped with that. And I can't remember in the book, The
It was
Empire of
it was
Pain.
removed by 1948 that
Yeah.
it
And
was a
that's when they came
conflict
on
of
the scene.
interest. Yeah,
That's when they
with
came on
owning
the scene.
businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
when
that was
the
removed
original
right
Sackler,
away
yeah, the
after
original
1
Sackler
year.
started doing that. And
Okay.
I can't remember where they lobbied, Carol, and I'll have to go back.
It was
And if I
part of the
can,
Geneva Convention, the original one, and then there was the Hippocratic Oath that was from London, sort of from their traditions, was adapted for 1 year to reflect that, and then it was gone.
the Sacklers, I can't remember what took place, but when they were trying to get things patented, I think that was one of their arguments was, well, this and this in the Hippocratic, and then not really talking to the pharmaceutical companies that are actually coming up with the medicines. They have to have a better relationship with doctors. And then they began, because doctors
Hmm.
were already like adverse to that because of, snake oil salesmen in the past, and like people, tricking people with L's and ointments, and they wanted to keep those two things separate and have where you allow your patient, you're doing at home visits, and you're really catering to each patient's needs. And doctors themselves have gone through like experimenting with leaching and all this other stuff before pharmaceutical companies were actually a thing. And so, they've had their issues as well. But it was the Sacklers, and I'll have to go back and listen. I think it's in the first couple of chapters. And whenever I get
Yeah.
like a
Well,
couple of things, I'll send it to you.
yeah, we could maybe do a little thing on that because I've got the history of the Hippocratic Oath and how it changed. I've got that in my notes, so we could kind of put those two things together because right around then was when WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, started planning and became a lot stronger a little, a decade or so later, where they started having it organized by the whole world to own patents on medicines and that whole protocol that has really separated the patient from getting good cures that really work. So it's worth a deep dive. There's lots of good information out there.
I know for my mom, like she was born in 1956, and when she was little, the doctor came to their house.
Hmm.
Old school, not that long ago.
Yeah. Well, I was born
More
in
personal.
1903. We had to go to the doctor's office, but it was different. It was um, not nearly so controlled. I think doctors were independent then. They had their own, they weren't all controlled by health insurance and hospitals. That was a big difference. And that's happened real recently.
Yeah, and that's a shame. That's where I'm the
Mhm.
most angry, is that if you're a patient and it's your body and you tell a doctor that you want this medication, this last couple of years when doctors said no, this is the only thing you can have, and then they kept you from being able to leave, and they tricked patients who are already in a state of like confusion, and they administered medicines that were in trials were not good, all because it was a protocol that was laid out for everybody, as if one protocol works on every single person, even though we all
Mhm.
have
That's
different DNA,
crazy.
we all have different genetic makeups. Like, it was so disgusting that they would not allow a patient to choose what they wanted in their body, and they tricked them and there's so many stories coming out. It is disgusting. And anyone who justifies this, I question if you're deep in your heart a eugenist. If you're deep in your heart, want people gone off this earth, because there is no way on God's green earth that you should give away your autonomy for what you request for your doctor, even if what you request is not good. That is your choice. And have that taken away in a way where they told you to go home until you had symptoms. So they had no way, and they didn't even try to treat you. And then when you get there, they demand, no, this is the treatment when you're on your last leg. That's disgusting that they then want autonomy over your body when they could have cared less about you when you had those first occurring symptoms. And they didn't allow you, and they didn't even research what would be good to stave those things off. And doctors that did look for things to knock down those big symptoms in the beginning, and didn't want you to just go home, and they were looking for actual answers, they were cast out. They were told it was not okay. That's actually what a doctor is supposed to do, and they weren't allowed to do it. And that is the most insane and evil thing that I've seen happen thus far. Absolutely
it was
disgusting.
horrific. But also, we're one of the only 2 countries, I think, in the whole world that allows medicines to be advertised. And so people are going to their doctors and asking for the purple pill or whatever. It says, ask your doctor about this. So, that may not be anything to do with what ails you. But if you go in and ask your doctor for some specific patent medicine, they'll probably give it to you without even knowing. So it goes both ways.
There were a couple of patent medicines that had been around forever. They wouldn't let anybody have. Like literally, they've had Nobel prizes. Like literally, they heal the body of so many things, and they made everyone think that. And there's still people today that are calling it, animal medicine, and like they've literally convinced people of medicine that's been around for over 60 years and has been miracle to so many people and is used for malaria and everything else, and people still think it's only for animals. This is how warped, this is how they have turned people against one another for monetary gain, for power and dominance over our health system, and they call that science. No, that's called greed and monopoly and destruction of human beings. Let's call it what it is. That has nothing to do with science, because they did not allow for people to try different medications to see what actually worked. In fact, they shut that all down, and they saw people were not faring well with what they did on that last leg. And to use money and give to hospitals money if they did that protocol is disgusting, knowing that all hospitals were in a situation. And this is where it gets really crazy. Now, remember what I told you about the federal government not giving enough money to cover the cost when people use Medicaid and Medicare. So let's say, okay, well, it was this much for the procedure, but insurance companies have to pay that out. But government on Medicaid and Medicare, they would only pay a portion. Okay, well, then what happens? Well, when you actually look at it and you've got the government only paying a portion, they know hospitals are going to be in great need for money, in desperate need for money to keep their head over water. Then they offer them this: if you do this and if you do that, we'll give you $30,000 for this. And so, of course, these hospitals are going to do whatever it takes to get out of the red and get out of the black. And they're going to do that in order to save their hospital, and they're going to justify it, because if their hospital goes down, they're not going to be there for a multitude of people. So they justified tricking people, convincing people that this is what they had to do in order to get that money from the government that promised them that money if they used, let's say an intubation, or they used a certain remdesivir. They did that and gave money to hospitals that are struggling because of the Medicaid and Medicare failure when it comes to federal government repaying the hospital. And they know most hospitals are upside down right now, and that those hospitals were gonna do whatever it took. And that's why you had board members that aren't even doctors making decisions as to what medicines could be used, and then forcing the doctors to do that in a protocol. This was a team effort, and people in our government that allowed this and were asleep at the wheel. Shame, shame, shame. Shame on you for saying you don't have to change doctors if you go with our insurance plan. You know, everyone get under the same insurance umbrella. It'll work out. And then to have the government say they're going to cover costs that they don't, and insurance and hospitals are raising the cost of like an MRI to so expensive that then insurance companies cover that, but our own government won't repay that amount, and they don't fix that to the point where hospitals are being destroyed. So now what's their next plan? All of our hospitals are bankrupt, and now there's nowhere to go after the hospitals who did what they were told got that amount of money, but people don't trust those hospitals. What in the world are they doing? What's the next step here? What's going
Well,
on?
there is a next step, Amber. I just got a thing the other day, like yesterday or the day before, from Peter McCullough saying that he's put together this amazing system. I can't remember exactly what it is, something wellness group. Anyway, the name of it, I'll find it and put it in the links in a minute. But it takes all the people that really solved those problems and puts them together and brings all those documents at your fingertips, and you pay $79 a month for 2 doctor visits online with these doctors and healers, and you have access to all the information and for your whole family. So if you have a bunch of people, it's $79 a month to have access to all these natural medicines and what they do, and have somebody overseeing what your symptoms are. And then if you pay a little bit more, like $30 more a month, if you have something really acute and ongoing, like long COVID, they will take you on for kind of a fixed fee. So it's way less than the government program, especially if you're middle-aged. You know, you're probably paying hundreds of dollars a month for not wanting to go there because they give you poison medicine. But this is something,
and also you get sick if you're around a lot of sick people. Like,
yeah,
the hospitals are shoving people out as soon as they get them in and having them leave early because they're like, we can't have you here in this state, in this situation. Like my aunt who has to get stem cell therapy because she has blood cancer. She had to go in to get a couple teeth removed because of an infection, because that's what the cancer's doing. And they pulled her teeth, and she really needed to still be in there for a bit. And they got rid of her, like, get out. We don't want you to get sick. Same with her son, who had a blown out disc, and they thought he couldn't walk anymore. And he goes in for surgery, and they sent him home 2 days later in a wheelchair. And now he can't feel his feet again, but they were worried he would get sick. So, like, it's insane what's going on. And I'm seeing it firsthand. So I'm so glad McCullough's coming up with something, an alternative,
yeah. I got
where people
it's
have a
called the
choice.
Wellness Company. That's the name of it. So if anybody wants to Google it, there's just tons of resources and lots of really good people all over the country that you have access to.
People should have a
cool.
choice, because after the major failure that we saw happen with the entities that had told us to trust them, and there's a lot of money exchange, and we all know that it doesn't matter what, career path you're in, when there's large sums of money being swapped back and forth in order to get people to be compliant, that's not 100% trustworthy. And some people aren't going to have their heart in the right place. So at least there's an option for people who've been, who were told natural immunity doesn't count and you should still get jabbed. Like, you should still, go and do these things that are experimental, because for the first time in forever, immunity doesn't work. And then when they come out and admit it, nobody comes back and says they're sorry for blocking you. That's part of the medical industry that it calls you out and says you don't know what you're talking about, makes you feel small and tiny. And then later, when their industry has to admit it, nobody's coming to apologize to the people who were punished, who were kicked off, who were ostracized. Of course not. That's because science changes, and we didn't know that. Well, then why were you so, like, dogged and destructive to other
it's not
humans
real
who
science.
were looking for answers? No, it's not. It's insane, and I'm tired of the insanity.
Well, that's why I think that, talking about that wellness company is in all facets, and medicine is the biggest one on the table right now. it's going to take parallel construction. It really is. And not a parallel construction like, oh,
Mhm.
you can do mainstream or you can do alternative and pay it for yourself. It's like, no, we have to pave a way for the structure of this parallel construction of medicine. And just like any of the structures, you work on that base foundation, like the wellness company, get something going and literally plan for everything to come over to that new construction. It's like in all things, we're working those bridges, we're building those bridges before we tear the old ones down. Those that are obsessed with the way the old bridges go, they're going to hang on to dear life, and they're probably going to go down with that bridge. But the main thing is that we see that the bridge does need to be taken down, and we are going to put all of our efforts and all of our good combined, I always like to mention the Cytosolve, Dr. Shiva's Cytosolve. We're gonna incorporate things in a way that makes sense, in a way that overlaps, in a way that we want. And it is going to take time, but that when we give things time and faith and prayer and all of our sweat and tears, then they get built up really solidly. So it's a method of learning from where we made mistakes. We had too many holes, we had too many lack of communication, and somehow these subversive agents
Too
made
much
their
corruption.
way in, and the money. Yep.
I will say what's really, for me personally, I don't care if someone wants to go the Rockefeller route of medicine. I don't care. I just don't want to be told what I can't have and what I can't do. And I don't want to be told that, vitamin C isn't good, or, you have to do this synthetic thing or this new experiment, because we got to figure out, we need data and we need to know what to do next. And so come on, be our pincushion, because we need some answers here. If I want to make sure that I'm going away, that's a healing that has to do with food and vitamins and being outside and really trying a different route than medicating the poo out of myself with so many things that I have no idea how my body's going to react. I want that choice. For me, like,
Yeah. I
however
think
it
there's more
works
than
out.
choice, though, on the
Yeah,
table.
I
Like,
guess, but
I
I feel
think
like,
there's corruption, deep
yes,
corruption in
there
our
is.
science, the
There is.
actual science.
Manipulation.
I will say
Yeah.
that, but like what I see with this pendulum always happening is that one group says, you're doing it all this way, we're going to change it, and it's going to be all this way. And then they mess up. And then the group says, no,
Mhm.
we're going to go back to this way. So I think for me, a more tempered approach is, don't tell me what I can and can't do with my body when it comes to asking for medicine, asking for what I want, and me getting doctors that will cater to me. Don't punish those doctors who might tell me to have some chicken soup and lots of water and vitamin D and lots of vitamin C and zinc. Don't tell them that they're kooks and quacks. Give them their space, because when that pendulum swings, we go from, ostracizing anybody who doesn't fit uh, um, the heterosexual template. And then we
Mhm.
push a whole narrative that's insane, where there's 189 genders and people have lost their mind. And then it goes all the way back to, you know, tradition that's oppressive to some people, because people exploit that. So, you have exploitation no matter what. And so for me, it's more like, stop forcing something down people's throat for
Mhm.
benefit, for money. And that's where the corruption is. So I do get
Exactly.
changing the system, but I always fear of like becoming the thing you ran from by pushing back. And in order to push back, you have to push back with equal force. And when that happens, sometimes you can end up just as extreme as the other, and there can be catastrophes happen. So it's like, this is all, I get what you guys are saying, and I agree that there needs to be huge changes. But people will jump in there and they will exploit it to try to prove that going a natural way is destructive. So you'll have saboteurs just like you do on every side, and we've got to be aware of that as well. Of like,
Mhm.
swinging that pendulum so that later, after all these changes are made, bad things happen, it swings all the way back, because we're always going from one trauma to another, because people and spiritual warfare gets in there and destroys anything
Mhm.
that it can get its hands on. So I'm super cautious with that. Although I'm so fed up and so angry at what happened, I can totally see where you guys are coming from, and I totally agree. I just worry about the pendulum
Well, the whole
extremism that
thing about
happens.
science is it was the whole principles of science are to be able to question it, and if you have a better argument and you can win the argument, then science shifts, and that's what's been stopped. Nobody is
Agree.
allowed to
Yeah.
question or to really look at things. There's so much coercion in who's paying for what studies and who gets to say what and who doesn't get to say what. That's all the corruption that is changed. So the whole things that we think are science and are being taught as science and are being um, that everything's built on is false. Well,
It's
it's not
gross
all
too.
false, but enough of it is coercion, and that it
Yeah,
isn't true
I
anymore. It's
agree.
lost truth.
I agree,
So
Carol.
I
And
think
I
that we
think
do need a new paradigm, and we need
we
to
do.
look at
We,
simple, just like the laws. There need to be, just simple things that are inviolable in terms of, listening and being reasonable about it without corruption. I think the corruption
right.
is what we need to take out of the whole system, and that
And that's
it's
why I want to remind people, and that's why I really stress this. When there are people pushing back against entities with lots of money and lots of power,
mhm,
they will make sure that people fail. And they will look for every which way to become your friend, to then cause people who have good intentions to go more extreme than they normally would, because of convincing them, tricking them, chaos measures, whatever it takes, to then cause them to do something that's atrocious, so that then they can repush what they had, that they were able to exploit to begin with. So when people say we need a whole new paradigm, I agree, but that's where caution comes in, and that's where regulations come in, where you don't
mhm,
allow for someone to come in and destroy what it is you're doing,
mhm.
and do the exact same thing in order for them to have control. And when
Well, you're
people get
right.
so excited about where we need a new paradigm, or let's burn it down, or whatever the thing is, we got to change everything, then someone comes in and will find a way to capture it. They'll find a way to sabotage it. But if you do it in a tempered way, in which you say, you know what, the people who want this, they need to be able to have this choice, and then people will gravitate towards that best choice, and giving those options, instead of saying we're getting get rid of all of it, because you better believe there's going to be an army of people who go and destroy that very mechanism that you're running to, and that you've just set, and that we all know is very good for us. So that's what my caution is. That's where I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, we don't want to fall for that trick where we
What?
get
Because
sucked
Amber,
in.
what you're outlining is that it's not about health, it's about control. Bottom
Hmm.
line.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's why I want people to be cautious, because in order to actually make things better and to do things that are healthy and bring people into like a really caring and really loving and healing, like where it's actually healing and not codependency, we have to be careful of getting drug into a system that mimics the other, and then we're defending it with everything, and then we look, and all of a sudden we're in those same situations that nurses are in today, because they got sucked into doing something that they would have never done if they had all the information. And I think that's when these entities mess with people by confusing people and getting people to be tribal and dogmatic about what they're doing. So
Hmm.
that it's I'm not cautioning, because I think what you're saying is, oh no, the traditional mission's everything, and you guys, I'm saying it because being cautious and having wisdom and knowledge with going into something, and looking at these new ways of doing things, or old ways that were dismissed, and bringing them back, always having in the back of your mind the pendulum swing and how to be used against you, is a
Yeah.
protective measure that's super important.
Well, I did read a big article. This was a bunch of years ago, comparing all the different medical systems around the whole globe, and the one that had the best results and cost the least money was a small country in Indonesia, and I can't even remember what the name of it was. But what the system was really cool, because anybody that was a licensed health practitioner, which would include, masseuses and body workers and everybody, they all were part of the system. If you were licensed, you were part of the system, and everybody had total choice to go wherever they wanted to. They had a card, they would pay with the card. That's all it was. There was no paperwork. The government, all the layers of complexity were removed, so it was really simple, and whoever got the best outcomes would get the customers. So each practitioner that had good results, that it was like actually competitive.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's just simple.
I love
Free market.
It takes everything out.
Yeah, that's
it is
what
free
makes
market.
it beautiful.
Yeah.
Because the
Mhm.
proof is in the pudding. I'm a big, the proof is in the pudding. Like if someone tells me, we should do A, B, C, and D, and they're not willing to jump in there and do it, I'm like, yeah, it's not something someone's passionate about. And that's the same thing with doctors. Like, you'll be able to see the more healthy people
Mhm.
and the market will drive that. It's when there's that manipulation with money and with patenting and control. And I see, like, it
Even the
makes people run
studies.
to the extremes. Yeah. And I just,
Financing
that's
the
my big
studies.
fear. Yeah. That's my big fear is like, you know what? There's so many things that we can do, and doctors would be able to do if
Mhm.
their hands weren't tied. And I just don't want to become the evil or like just be blind to manipulation that can happen when people are looking for that alternative. Because I respect the alternative, and I'm super excited, about having other choices. I just know the trickery. I know
Yeah, we've
how
been
they
tricked
take it over.
before in that same exact method. That's what they do. What about, those of us that believed Obama was about change? Or maybe that's a bad example, but it's
No, it's
always like,
happened yeah, it was a good example. It happens all the time. I mean, it's literally, and that's why I think, like, in every religious text, and even not religious but spiritual texts, they all talk about balance. They all talk about not,
Mhm.
and so it's like, when people are fighting, they get on the teeter totter, and either one slam down to the ground or the other one. But when you're in the center, you can actually weather. You're faring much better. You're tilting, and your imbalance is much less. It's much less extreme. There's much less jolting and like slamming down. And it's smoother. And I think that when you've got uh, lots of historical, whether it's religious or spiritual texts, and they all talk about balance, there's a reason. And I think that's why I'm super cautious because, man falls for things over and over again. We relive it over and over again. And I think now that we've really been traumatized these last couple of years, that if we look at it as a more balanced approach and say, we just need options, we need a free market, we need people to make their own choice. And then we see how it moves from there. I think that's the best way. And that's why I like what Carol brought up with about Peter McCullough is that they're doing that. They are doing a parallel
Mhm.
economy. They are, and then everyone will gravitate to where they want to go. And I think that's beautiful. And then after that, I think people will notice these people over here stay sick. These people over here don't. And naturally, it will do it without people forcing it or becoming the evil that we just witnessed.
yeah. And
Mhm.
it's also, there are many people that rely on pharmaceutical drugs for their health. And we're not knocking that at
And
all.
for their
Not at all.
life. Yeah.
For their life. And that's so important. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why you need to know alternatives, because you don't want to be like, I'm on this medicine that protects me and protects my life, but I don't know what it does, what the function is, or what an alternative that I could get in case that company shut down overnight or something. It's like,
Exactly. And you just brought up something super important, Tara. A lot of our medicines are manufactured in China and other places, right? And so if there was a problem where shipping, like whenever there was a shutdown and our shipping didn't get here with basic PPE because it's all made over there, like we had people put in extreme situations, fearful situations, all because we don't have that industry and we're dependent upon another area. So if someone is dependent upon insulin, and they may not know that there's cinnamon, that and there's other things that you can use whenever
Mhm.
you don't have those things. They need to be
The
able to have
diet.
those options. Yeah, just in case those lines are cut, and we don't have access. So it's not about replacing and forcing people into doing things that, they be like, no, I trust my medicine. Great. But what if something happens again, or you can't afford your medicine, or you're getting exploited, or you're getting left behind? You need to be able to have someone to turn to that will have an alternative for you. And shutting those people down is very dangerous, especially for our government to do that or participate in that, because they don't have the resources and they don't have the industry they once had, and they're dependent on getting it somewhere else. So it's absolutely ridiculous to be bought off by lobbyists and putting your citizenry that you depend on their taxes and you depend on them to fight for their country. If you get yourself in a quandary because your poor decision making skills as leaders, you're telling people that they can't research or know what we have on this land to be able to have, strong citizens that you are going to lean on, because you're not going to do that work. You're going to put all your supposed pawns, or the people that you need to stand up for their country. If they're sickly and they can't, then what good are you as a leader? You're a nobody, because then the citizenry and our country's a nobody. So to debilitate people in that manner is so irresponsible and so ignorant that it blows my mind every time I realize that they're not thinking ahead, and they're putting themselves in a vulnerable position, and they won't even be able to be a leader, because there's nobody to lead if another country has taken it over in every facet, and they can't even make their own medicine, and then they shut off anybody who can tell you about how to heal yourself. Like, that's insane. And I feel like, we need a reset with our mind and just thinking about our vulnerabilities.
Well, I just want to bring up something. You just reminded me of something I was thinking about the other day, right? Is like, say you are someone in this predicament where you're taking a medicine. Maybe you want to have extra medicine in your medicine cabinet and the alternative, okay? And the thing is that people who, the original word for store is storage. Speaking of leaders, leaders should be focused on our country having silos or whatever we need for like stockpiles of the basics, And if you think about it, haven't our society been manipulated to think if anybody stores things, heaven forbid you store things, that you're a hoarder, okay? And if you think about it, storage and a store and taking care of the community is not hoarding. And to push those things into the same thing and to say, oh, if you have a stocked amount of this, you know what I mean? It's against like our common sense to think, why wouldn't we have a stockpile of things we need? Like, to not have that is very vulnerable. It makes no sense. And so that way it's like your basement you should be able to have as your first store. You need to go to the store. That's not your basement, but whatever.
See, that's where the devil's in the details, and that's where we need to worry about. Are we getting influenced by other countries or other entities that do want us to be debilitated, and then we believe that it's coming strictly from our government, and then our government is so out of touch because of algorithms and because of their bubble. They're in a huge bubble. Are they aware that some of the citizens are being fed information that if you store items, that all of a sudden you're a hoarder or a horrible person? There's a difference between a hoarder who collects paper plates and old food and leaves it around their house and has a rat problem with dead cats everywhere. That's one thing, but calling someone a hoarder that is making sure that in a state of emergency they can take care of their whole family, that is something that, like, if our government is okay with people being mocked about that, that's a shame. But if they're allowing another country to cause ignorance to happen to their own citizenry, what another shame. So either way, wherever the guilt falls, whether it's an infiltration and another country looking for dominance, or it's our own country, we're looking at severe irresponsibility here. And when you brought that up, Tara, that's something that, like, yeah, that's the word trickery. And we don't know if it's coming from, other countries that, we do that to other countries do that to us, or if we don't know if it's organic, where our government officials are paid off in order to have lobbies say, we control the food supply. And then it comes from Gates Foundation and people like that who want to be able to turn on and turn off whatever, depending on who's behaving or who's giving them what they want, in order to whatever, long long-term plan that they have for us. So I think you brought up a super duper point there that like, hey, wait a minute, they're calling it hoarding. That's not hoarding. That's actually being responsible. And that's a shame. And our government shouldn't be allowing it. So, whether it's from the outside coming in and our government's in a bubble, they don't see it, or our own government's doing it, that's really sad. And we're in a bad we're in a bad state of affairs.
Is this some of the new mental health things that you're talking about? That hoarding is something that puts you in a state that you have to be treated? Is that what you're referring to?
No,
That's
food storage.
Just
yeah,
food
not really the
storage?
angle, but I'm sure it could go into that angle, because anything that they can dub someone, anything that can go into a mental illness category,
Right.
oh man, you're a target.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's been people on social media making fun of people who they call them preppers or hoard. They don't call them preppers, they call them hoarders. And then they say, look at these people ready for the. But then the first time that their proverbial social media and their algorithm says, we got to worry about this, we got to worry about that, then literally they go and do the same thing, and then they call it being prepared. So there's such a division, and whether it's coming from the outside or it's the inside, our elected officials should be worried, because you know what? Your leadership doesn't matter if your people are not there to lead. Like you're not even securing your own position when you're putting money before everything else. So you're literally making yourself really less needed by entities and corporations and people you don't even know what their ulterior motives are when you're not standing up for your citizenry or your constituents. So, I have questions for lots of politicians on both sides of the aisle where I'm like, are you even thinking? Like, where's your head? Like, what is going on with you? You're debilitating your citizenry that elected you, by the way. Maybe, who knows? But at the same point, you've got them being beholden to people who don't care if out of the blue they have no leadership, and they leave them stranded in the city or town they were supposed to look after, and everyone's got their pitchforks coming after the very people that listened to people who dumped them and took away their leadership by having them believe that they were doing the right thing. And the right thing is always listening to your constituents, not listening to corporate entities who want a bottom line. And then later, when you're, do you think the constituency is going to blame that corporation that lobbied you, or are they going to blame you? They're going to blame you. So you should be smart. You should hedge your bets there, genius class, genius political class, and do what you should do. But they're not, I'm not going to say they're not. They should. Maybe they're unaware. Maybe they're compartmentalized or in such a bubble they don't have an idea.
Well, I heard that they were, many of them were farmed, and they were grown to be in these positions, and that's why they don't have a real heart in the matter, opinion, intellect sometimes, and it's like, yep, we're kind of onto them now, and that is a super good thing. But that's why it takes a lot of work, because so long these people have been plugged into this position, that company, this company. And I heard, but I don't know what other terms they use, that corn is usually represents American grown, but they use other vegetables to represent like other countries. I don't know what they are. But that makes sense to me, because look at what we have witnessed.
Was this the children of the GMO corn that Dr.
That's probably a take. That's probably a take on it. Yeah.
That was so funny that Dr. Hamamoto called it that.
Yeah.
Children of the GMO corn. That'd be a good Halloween costume. But what I think we're doing for Halloween to like bring smiles is my husband's going to dress up like Bob Ross, the painter. I'm going to be a fluffy cloud, and my two kids are going to be happy little trees. So I think that's what we're going to do.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So we're super excited about. And then we're going to talk in that really, calm voice and see if anybody catches on to it, because they may not get it at first. But, it's just I find that I'm looking for soothing and happiness after having conversations that need to be had and things that need to be said out loud, so people really can wrap their head around what issues we're having and feel empowered by saying, you know what, other people are saying this. I know I felt something. We do need to put pressure on those who lead us, because it's our job. Like, they work for us. Let's get real frank here. Like, this is very important for us to grab our power and really express these things. But in the same token, we can't forget to smile. We can't forget to have fun. We can't forget to have these family moments, these gentle moments, hugging and really cherishing one another, cherishing our family, and not be full of cortisol and stress in these moments. So, we're just looking for these moments every moment, because these are deep conversations we're having that are really difficult for some people to hear and stressful. And that's not the reason why we're having them. We're having it to empower you, to have you to question, what's going on around you, and have autonomy over your own mind, to like be able to think for yourself and feel confident with that, and to really research and not just think, if it pops in my head, it must be true. Do your due diligence. Make sure you're not feeding yourself full of, BS, because you can't complain about it if you're doing the same thing to yourself. But we should have that freedom to do so. And we should push for people to yearn for that, because that's
Yeah.
very important.
Well, one thing to think about is that our leaders are supposed to work for us. But if this change happens, this, new great deal, whatever we want to call it, they won't anymore. We have no agency. The stakeholder capitalists include big government, big money, and foundations, and not individuals. Individuals are not stakeholders. So it changes the relationship totally. And we need to point that out to people, that right now, theoretically, we're supposed to still
So I
be in.
appreciate capitalism. I don't appreciate corporatism. And we've got corporate
Mhm.
welfare, and we've got corporatism, and we have monopolies, and we have too big to fail. And what we don't have is mom and pop, small business, and organic capitalism, where people can go out and make what they want to of their business, and really be able to create and help their community. And we need to support that small business structure and that
Mhm.
entrepreneurship,
Exactly.
because
The,
I don't
the
want people to
foundations.
lean on the government and say, well, the government that failed us, let's get rid of all capitalism so the government can step in, because the government was part of the corporatist BS we just dealt with, where they worked hand in hand. So, I like capitalism, but I also like for not to be monopolized, taken over,
Mhm.
and exploited, when everybody can have a piece of the pie with their entrepreneurship and their talents that they have to offer this world. And, it is a type of trade and barter, when everybody has a service or something special that they can share. And however they decide to change, like if you were teaching yoga, Carol, and I'm over by you, and I'm like, hey, what if I just do your yard and I take care of your yard and you give me 2 yoga
Mhm.
lessons? You're like, okay, great. I think that works in so many ways, but then there's times that we need money, and we pay for that service. But I think when you got these big corporate entities that tie the hands of these smaller entrepreneurs, that's when our capitalistic system is in a lot of trouble. And that's when people lean on the government to come in and save them, which they fail at, as well as the big corporatist takeover. So both of those things are very dangerous in their
Yeah.
extreme
Well, the
sense.
foundations have become really dangerous too, because it used to be that they were charitable organizations, or at least they're sold as that. But now they're owned by the huge corporate interests, and they promote the huge corporate interests, and they do it without paying any taxes. So that's why all the money is going to the small few handful of people. And I think that someone pointed out recently that the WEF backwards is few, and I think that's a way we can turn that around.
That's a
Turn
great point.
Yeah, because it really points up exactly what's happening. That the few are trying to control the many, in a real unfair way, and that's what that whole program is all about. And it seems to be very conscious program to do that exactly, to take the agency of the many. It's saying democracy doesn't work anymore, so we're the ones, the chosen few, that can have
And they
all the
say that
answers.
a lot at their
They
meetings.
do.
They do
Mhm.
talk about being a few. So, I mean,
Mhm.
that is how in your face it is. It's kind of like, it doesn't really matter what you guys decide, because we few are going to, convince you that we've got your best interests at heart. Anytime there's a group that splits off and says, we're the few that can do this, ah, then, but you're utilizing the group, and you're utilizing the labor and the energy of a large contingency, and then you're breaking off and saying, now what can we do to control, kind of like you would do with a slave. So someone who has that mentality really has me questioning their motives, and that's a natural human instinct, and they can't, be like, well, that's, you should just trust me. Excuse me. Like, no, that's not how it works. It's called earning trust. And right now you failed at that. Like you failed miserably on earning trust. And then you're demanding that, you just don't get it, or, you don't understand. This is something that only a few people can handle. No, I understand that, everyone else is a pawn to you, except those that you favor. And that's a problem, because you're still getting our tax dollars. You're still getting our labor. You're still getting our energy and our attention and in our resource. Like, you're literally like having us become, dependent and using our whole existence in order to then say we're not even worth having a say in this process. That's disgusting, and nobody should be allowing any entity to do that whatsoever, ever in their life.
Well, something that I saw this really interesting conversation between two guys, and one of them was a AI programmer of robots, Lex Friedman, and the other one was a engineer biologist. His name was Michael Levine. I talked a little bit about him about this conversation before, but one of the things they brought up, some such interesting ideas. One is that biology is based on action, and all of life is based on action. And so the idea that we can solve problems real time and quickly is how it works on the smallest, most basic levels. That there is agency and freedom within ourselves to solve these problems, and that's kind of how biology works, is that there is a lot of freedom and autonomy as an embryo is growing. These cells become this, and this cells become this, and they all know what they're doing, and they do it. And Lex Friedman, who is the AI software guy, asked the biologist. He said, we know this about biology, but why do our systems not reflect that? And that was a really, really telling question. That is how life works and how life organizes.
They're not organic.
Yeah, so I think there is something that's not organic that is coming, this idea of just top down, and it doesn't work with life. It doesn't work with the biosphere. It's not how things are organized in the real world in real time. But we are, and that's how these problems are getting solved, by having these conversations by people that maybe wouldn't have agreed with each other a few years ago. But we found our hearts are all in exactly the same place, and we have to do this. And it's happening all over the world. People are having these conversations, and it's a wonderful example of
when you have a group
happening.
When you have a group of elite, Carol and Tara, that decide that their template will work for everybody, and they shovel it downward. And then they've decided they've done such a great job. And then they tune out people who may have suffered underneath it, or who aren't doing so well underneath it. The fact that they are not bothered, and they just look at it, well, like very matter of fact, well, not everybody's going to be out. Well, it's not, but then they've decided that they are those who can answer the call, and that they have the solution. I'm sorry, it's not an actual solution if untowards amount of people are actually suffering and they're not being heard, and it's causing lots of problems. And just because the people that are okay with it have decided, yes, we're okay with this, you are not actually looking for a solution if you can watch so many people not do well and not come up with something to help those people as well in your scenario of you're there to help, right? You don't say, I'm going to help these 100 people, and you lay out a template that's one size fits all, and 30 people don't do well under it, and you go, well, we're doing a great job. You need to trust us. We've got the answers. Not for 30 people, you don't. So you're not the superhero you're claiming to be. This is your false advertisement, and the fact that you're so out of touch, and you're so cynical and rude and, just really, misogynistic and elitist and kind of dominant over the idea, well, I helped 70 people. So these 30 people, it's probably they had an issue or you just can't help everybody. Yes, but that's what you're saying you want to do. Like it's false advertisement and you're not allowing for people, the 30 people who didn't fit well into your template to find another, avenue. You're in fact closing it down and blaming them because you failed. You got to see. If it's out of 100 and you only help 70, that's a C. That's not an A plus. And you're selling yourself as an A plus. So you're a liar. And you're the kind that, does whatever it takes to sit in that position. No, you failed. Now there's no trust for you because you pretended you're helping 100% and you're only helping 70. And some of that 70 is like, look, they're not really paying attention and they don't even know if it really helped because they're just going with the narrative. And, they may not have been harmed by it, but later they might be. So it's a false reality that these people are living under.
It's a false reality. And I just want to kind of pull everything in and, so that we can go back to that happy Halloween-y stuff. But absolutely, when it's just like that little video you showed that one time, Amber, of like trying to stuff everything. The shape goes so well, but you got to stuff it in that same hole, right? So the one size fits all does not work. And the age-old thing of like, I'm the best salesman and I'm making the most money off of my product, that means it's a good product no matter who it hurts. That format doesn't work anymore. We're not going to do it anymore, okay? And so I know that our stream is going to be closing out in timing. So what are the wrap-up thoughts on how we can wrap it up and go positively about our day while being in the warrior mode to tackle this stuff?
Well, I think we can all go out and enjoy the harvest. That's where we started. We can come back to that circle.
We're going to be breathing some really good mountain air, looking at the forest canopy to see if we find some really cool mushrooms and moss. And like my kids will find some rocks that they like or some really cool pine cones that we'll use as gifts to put peanut butter around them and birdseed and then just hang them everywhere and give them to just people that are on our mind. And, then we'll go on our boat ride and, we'll just like look up at the sky and have a picnic and then sit by the fire this evening and, talk about just funny stuff. And we might do story time where everybody makes up a story and, just do something as a family. And really, there's small moments in situations of crisis and in situations of instability. You have to take those moments to breathe in the air and to enjoy those you love. And even if it's just a day and then you have to get back to the grind the next day, do it. Take those moments, put your stuff down, put your phone down and cherish those moments because those are the memories, especially for children and especially for people in need that get rid of the cortisol, that get rid of the stress and bring in that love connection that we really need that has been ripped away from us. And some of us allowed it. And we got to get back to connecting again.
Oh, Carol, can't hear you. Can't hear you.
I was just saying that's the new paradigm we're talking about.
Yes. And so I think John's having trouble coming back in to close us out. But I just want to say, we know it's Red October. So warriors, keep on fighting. Families, keep on having fun. Prayers for everyone. We got this on all angles. Okay, we know what we're up against, and we are not backing down. So everyone, go out, enjoy your weekend, enjoy October, enjoy the leaves if you're somewhere where you can see them. Enjoy each other, and just have love in your heart.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Thanks. Goodbye.